This is the Albanian coast. It's one of the last untouched stretches of shoreline in all of Europe. Pristine lagoons, pine forests, flamingos, actual flamingos, migrating through every year on their way between Africa and Europe. And somebody wants to build a $5 billion luxury resort right here. That somebody is Jared Kushner, son-in-law of the President of the United States. And the people of Albania are saying, not a chance. Chapter 1. Let's start with the place. So first, where are we? Albania. A small country on the Adriatic Sea, wedged between Greece, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Montenegro. Most people in the West couldn't point to it on a map. And that, honestly, is kind of the point. For decades, Albania was one of the most isolated countries on Earth. Under communist dictator Enver Hoxha, it was closed off completely. No foreign travel, no foreign media, no foreign investment. When communism collapsed in 1991, the country basically had to build itself from scratch overnight. Today, Albania is one of the fastest-growing tourism destinations in Europe. Beautiful coast, cheap prices, ancient ruins, mountain villages. The government is betting big on tourism as the engine of its economic future, and it wants to join the European Union badly. Formal membership talks opened in 2024. The goal, EU membership by 2030. That context matters, because what happens next is a story about a small country that wanted two things at the same time, and discovered those two things might not be compatible. The lagoon in question is called Vjosa Narta. It's a protected wetland on Albania's southwestern coast. It shelters over 200 bird species, including flamingos and Dalmatian pelicans. It sits on the Adriatic flyway, the migration corridor connecting Central Europe to Africa. It's protected under Albanian law. It's protected under international conservation conventions Albania has signed. Or at least, it was. Chapter 2. Enter Affinity Partners. In March 2024, Jared Kushner posted design images on social media. Sleek, aspirational, luxury villas, a marina, hotel towers on an Adriatic island. The caption, exciting news from Albania. His firm, Affinity Partners, was announcing two projects. One on the Albanian coast near the Narta Lagoon, one on the island of Sazan, a small uninhabited island that was once a Soviet military base during the Cold War, and which sits inside a national marine park. The combined investment initially floated at $1.4 billion. By 2026, that number had grown to somewhere between 1.6 and 4 billion, depending on which announcement you read. Now here's where it gets interesting. For Kushner's project to happen, Albania had to change its laws, specifically the laws protecting the area from construction. In February 2024, the Albanian parliament passed what they called Law 21/2024, a new measure allowing the prime minister to override existing protections for strategic investments in protected areas. The president ratified it 3 days after Kushner's plans became public. 3 days. Environmental groups were stunned. This is not how protected areas work. You don't just legislate around international conservation law because a prominent investor is interested. But that is exactly what happened. And Prime Minister Edi Rama, who has been chasing EU membership, who has promised clean governance and rule of law, stood behind it completely. There is no chance for this investment to stop as long as I am here. Prime Minister Edi Rama, June 2026. Chapter 3. The land nobody agreed belongs to anyone but wait. Before any resort gets built, someone has to own the land. And in Albania, that is genuinely complicated. When communism collapsed in 1991, Albania went through a chaotic privatization process. Land that had been seized by the state was gradually returned, but the records were incomplete. The process was opaque, and competing claims emerged everywhere, particularly along the coast, where the land was valuable. The Narta area is no exception. Families claim their land was taken during communism and never properly returned. Court records support some of those claims. One Albanian family, The Konomi family says the land where Kushner plans to build has been farmed by their family for generations. The court records support them. They are trying to take from us what is ours. Bledar Alexandros Konomi, local landowner. The Albanian government says the land is privately owned, legitimately purchased by the developer, but competing claims have emerged. Property disputes like this are common enough in Albania. What is not common is a multi-billion-dollar resort being constructed on disputed land while those disputes are unresolved. And here's what Albania's own anti-corruption prosecutors found. In June 2026, SBIK, the Special Prosecution Against Corruption and Organized Crime, froze the bank accounts of Albania Land Development, a company tied to the resort. The investigation? Allegedly fraudulent property titles, organized schemes to acquire the land in legally questionable ways. So, to summarize where we are, a politically connected American investor gets special investor status from a government desperate for his approval. A parliament changes protected area laws to enable his project. Anti-corruption prosecutors start investigating the land deals, and construction starts anyway. Chapter 4. The Flamingo Revolution. Late May 2026. Bulldozers enter the Narta area. Barbed wire goes up on the beach. Private security guards are hired to keep people out of what had previously been public coastline. Video goes viral. A guard punches a protester, drags them away from the fence. Albania loses its mind. Within days, thousands of people are in the streets of Tirana, the capital, 150 kilometers from the lagoon. Then, thousands more, night after night, for a week, 2 weeks, chanting the same thing. Albania is not for sale. The symbol of the movement, the flamingo. People carry cardboard cutouts, pink inflatable flamingos, flamingo flags. It becomes the image of the entire protest, the bird that lives in the lagoon, that nests there, that migrates through on its way between Africa and Europe, and that has no say in what happens to its home. The protesters aren't just angry about birds, they're angry about something deeper. Albania has been a poor country for a long time. It's watched its coastal land be undervalued, its political class be for sale, its institutions bend for whoever has the right connections. And now, a man with the last name Kushner, whose father-in-law is the President of the United States, is getting an entire country's environmental laws rewritten for a resort he found on a boat trip. We were on a friend's boat, and we stopped for a swim. Effectively, that's how we found it. Ivanka Trump, June 2026. A swim, that is how billions of dollars of Albanian coastline gets handed over. A swim. Chapter 5. The EU problem nobody wants to talk about. Here's the thing about Albania's EU ambitions. They're real. The country has been working toward EU membership for years. Formal accession talks opened in 2024. The goal is 2030, but EU membership comes with conditions. Real ones. Rule of law, judicial independence, environmental standards. You cannot demolish a protected wetland for a luxury resort and call it alignment with European values. The European Commission noticed. In response to the Kushner controversy, Brussels issued a formal statement, reminding Albania that its EU accession requires total compliance with European conservation standards. The Commission spokesperson specifically flagged Albania's law on strategic investments as raising concerns about environmental impacts in protected areas. Greece, Albania's neighbor and already an EU member, went further. Athens issued diplomatic notes over property rights violations affecting Greek minority citizens, whose land was caught up in the disputed acquisition. Greece called it directly relevant to Albania's European integration. And then there's the simple geopolitical reality. Albania has spent decades trying to align itself with the West, with NATO, with the EU, with Washington. It gave up its Soviet-era bunkers. It sent troops to Afghanistan. It cooperated on migration with Italy. It broke off diplomatic relations with Iran after a cyber attack. It did all of this to earn a seat at the Western table. And now, in exchange for the privilege of hosting a Trump family resort on a protected lagoon, it may be putting all of that at risk. Chapter 6. The pattern behind the deal. Albania is not the first place this has happened. Jared Kushner left the White House in January 2021. Within months, his investment firm Affinity Partners received a $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, despite senior Saudi officials privately expressing concerns about Affinity's inexperience, and despite the fund's own investment committee recommending against it. The decision was overridden at the top. In 2024, Kushner announced plans for a luxury real estate project in Serbia, specifically at a former army headquarters in Belgrade. After street protests, sound familiar? That project was dropped. Now Albania. The pattern is consistent. Find a country that wants something from the United States. Find a government willing to provide extraordinary access in exchange for the prestige of American investment or the implied protection it brings. Move fast. Change laws if needed. Build. None of this is necessarily illegal. Political connections facilitating business deals is as old as capitalism. What makes Albania different is the scale of what's being offered, a protected national ecosystem, and the speed at which a government changed its own laws to enable it. Prime Minister Rama is not naive. He knows what he's trading. He's trading environmental credibility and legal legitimacy for the symbolic value of a Trump-adjacent mega investment. Whether that trade makes sense depends entirely on what you think Albania needs more: ecological integrity or foreign capital headlines. Chapter 7. What the Flamingos Can't Tell You. Here's what I keep coming back to. The Flamingos don't know any of this. They don't know about affinity partners or strategic investment laws or EU accession timelines. They just know that this lagoon has been here for thousands of years, that it's safe, that it feeds them, that they come back every year. The people of Albania, the ones filling the streets with cardboard flamingos, they know all of it. They know the history of their country being opened up for the taking. They know what it means when laws get changed overnight for a single investor. They know what it looks like when a government decides that the right foreign name is worth more than its own people's land. And they're saying, not this time. As of June 2026, the protests are ongoing. SPIAC's corruption investigation is open. The European Commission is watching. The bulldozers have not left. Prime Minister Rama has not backed down. Kushner has not commented publicly. What happens next in Albania will tell you a lot about what kind of country it's choosing to become, and whether a small nation on the Adriatic can stand up to the weight of a very powerful name. The Flamingos, for their part, will be back next year. The question is whether their lagoon will still be there. Next, another small country, another powerful investor, another government that said yes when it should have said no. Subscribe to follow the series.